Okay. We're finally getting on with our Bible study. I'm going to probably try and do it in smaller portions and then maybe I can actually get through it. Um, so today we're going to start talking about Genesis chapter 1 and how God created the earth. And the reason that this is so important, and one of the reasons I think God put it at the beginning of the Bible, is because it teaches us so much of his character. Um, this is one of the passages in the Bible that is not talking about people. It is all from God's perspective, what God is doing, how he does it, how he, like, just all about him. And it's interesting to me because I had someone teach on this once and they started off by saying, so when we start talking about creation, how many of you kind of glaze over and get bored? Like you start reading through that chapter or even just preaching a sermon, how many people do you see just kind of be like, oh, I know this story? It's because there's no people in it. How conceited are we, right? I was like, wait. Because we're just more drawn to stuff that is about people instead of about God. And this chapter is all about God. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about because there's there's no people involved in it. It's just all about the perfection and holiness and creativity of our loving Heavenly Father. Okay, let's get started. I want you to pause this and read the first chapter if you haven't yet. Um, and then we are going to get into some more characteristics of God. So, in the beginning, God is is something we talked about in the last Bible study, where we learn all about that God was there from the beginning. He has no beginning. He's the one that created time. Before he created time, there was no time. It just, he is the always there. He's the one that has no beginning and no end. Um, Nobody had to create him, and he did not need anything to create everything. Right? He is all powerful. The fact that he could create the entire universe um, in 6 days, you guys. I mean, yeah, mind blowing. The fact that he actually knows everything. He didn't need to check with an architect or any kind of an archaeologist or um, any specialist of any kind, because he's the one that created the brains of the people that came up with this stuff on Earth now. He knew everything. He's the one that gave understanding and the ability to learn to humans. Everything that we know starts with him. He's always present. He's everywhere at one time. And this doesn't mean that he is the tree. God is not the tree. God is not the rock. His spirit is not a part of things. What it means is that God is so big, so powerful, that all of the universe with all of the galaxies forever and ever, as far as the eye could see on any telescope, has all been created by God. Just start to wrap your mind around that. There's verses that say that the whole earth can fit in the palm of God's hand. The whole earth fits in the palm of his hand. But that doesn't make him too big to know all the details of every person's life on the entire planet for all time and actually have a plan for all of it. It's like the biggest puzzle a person can imagine. Okay. Only God possesses these three things: knows all powerful, and present everywhere at one time. He can be present everywhere at one time because he's that big. All right. I want you to look up Jeremiah 23, 23 and 24. So stop the video and watch that now. Jeremiah 51, verse 15. So read those passages. And and one more, Psalm 147, verse 5. Go through those verses, and the Bible tells us a little bit more about how God creates. So one thing that I like to think about is how, like, when we crochet something, for instance, how do we get to the point where we actually create the thing we're making, where we make a blanket, because that's like one of the only things I can make when I make a blanket. So let's think about all the things that needed to happen to get a blanket made. It's not just about me knowing the pattern. It's about, okay, well, where did the yarn come from? Where did the colors come from? How did they make those colors? Where did the plastic hook come from? How did they make the plastic? What kind of specialist had to come up with that? And then have a system that actually, like some sort of a plant that makes these little hooks, and they're all exactly the right size so that we can do like a 5.5 or a 5 or a 4 or a 3. Like someone went through a lot of trouble in order for them to make the plant that makes those hooks. What kind of a specialist, an architect, did it take to make that? Like, there's so much involved for me to make a blanket. When God created the earth, he didn't have to consult anybody. He didn't have to figure anything out or learn anything. He didn't have to use other things to make his thing. He spoke it. He said, "Let there be light," and light appeared. That's it. Because everything comes from him to start with. It's all made by him, by his great imagination, his creativity. Okay, so God spoke. The entire universe was formed at God's command. It says that in Hebrews 11, verse 3. Psalm 33, verses 6, 8, and 9. I want you to look that up. So pause the video and look up those verses. Psalm 33, 6, 8, and 9. By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. For he spoke, and it was done. He commanded, and it stood fast. It's that simple and that amazing. Okay. Let me keep going here. Okay, so it was good. When God made everything, it was good. He said it was good. So for a perfect God, I mean, for me to say something's good has a lot less value than the almighty creator of the universe saying something's good, right? That's a big deal for God to say it was good. So every time he creates something, he says, and it was evening, and it was morning, and it was evening the second day. It was morning, and it was evening the third day. And it was good every day that he made the next part of the creation. It was good. I love that. Okay. Think about this in line with all of the things that God created. There is, what if God created it just a tiny bit different? Like, what if God didn't have the law of gravity? What if God put the sun just a mile closer to Earth? What if he put the sun half a mile closer to Earth? Now, I'm not a scientist. I don't know how close he could get to the Earth without burning it up. But I do know that The distance that the sun has from the earth is vital to the survival of the entire planet. The distance that the moon has from the earth and how these things revolve around each other is vital to how the earth can survive. And God, in his amazing, intricate, powerful wisdom, made it perfect. It was good. It was good. Okay, so let's skip ahead a little bit here. We treat laws with respect, right? We need to. We walk very carefully along the edge of a cliff because we know that to defy the law of gravity will have serious repercussions. Whenever you have a law, you have a consequence. Unless one person is a daredevil, we avoid flirting with those consequences like we avoid the plague. These laws and this structure and order are a reflection of God's nature. It's the way he is. And that's really important for us to understand. Laws are not just something that our government and our police and everything give us. It's something that God instituted for us to survive on earth and for our safety. Laws are a good thing. They are an absolute. Like, there are some things that actually are absolute. Absolute truth is that gravity works. If you mess with it, bad things are going to happen. We all know this. You can't jump off a cliff and nothing happens. You're not going to float because gravity is an absolute truth. We know this. Okay. Perfection is fundamental to God's character. Because God is perfect, he could only make a perfect creation. Perfect creation. Not just, it's okay. It's perfect. Creation has changed, as we will see, but in the beginning, it was just right. God said it was good. It was perfect. Okay, let's think about some of the ways that God shows his love and his kindness to us. We know that he is perfect and holy and big, and that can be really scary because he knows our thoughts. He sees all the time everything that we do everywhere we go, and that can be scary if we don't understand how good he is. And so let's look at this. Why do you think that God made everything with color instead of shades of gray and black and white? What purpose would there be for that? I mean, really. He did that because he loves us, because he's a good father. What purpose could there be in making all the flavors that we get in our food? I mean, God could have made everything taste like liver or squash or something that you really don't like. Instead, he gave us so many different flavors, and he gave us taste buds to notice those flavors because he loves us and he wants good things for us. Fragrance. Can you imagine if the whole earth smelled like rotten eggs all the time? And it doesn't. Trees have a smell. Grass has a smell. Flowers have beautiful fragrance. Really good food has good smells. And there was no need for that. That wasn't something necessary for the function of the earth. This is God creating above and beyond. This is God doing the extra because of his love for us. Let's see, what else? The variety of everything. I mean, in 1 Timothy 6, verse 17, it says, God richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. So, the more fascinated that we become with how God created the earth, the more impressed we are, the more shocked we are, the more astounded we are. You know, they keep creating these new telescopes so that they could see further. so that humans could see further of what God has already made. That He made things further than our eye could see for thousands of years. He created it because He knew. He knew we would see it one day. And there is more galaxies out there that we've never even seen. Because God is so much bigger than we can wrap our heads around. I love it. Okay, that's as far as I'm going to go. Next time I'm going to get into when God created people. But this lesson was all just about our wonderful, loving Heavenly Father who is so creative and so big and knows everything. And He's present everywhere all the time. He sees everything. He sees every thought. He's the one that thought up every thought. He's the one that made our brains to be able to process and think and take in information and learn and grow. That's our Creator, our loving Heavenly Creator. That's our God. I hope that was encouraging for you guys. And let me know if you have any questions.